Peter Cushing's return as the eccentric inventor Doctor Who in the second Dalek film, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. After police officer Tom Campbell stumbles into the Doctor's time machine, mistaking it for a real police box, Tom is then thrown into an adventure with the Doctor, his granddaughter Susan, and his niece Louise, where he's brought into the far future, where the Daleks have taken over the Earth and forced human beings into slavery, under the control by the emotionless Roboman. Now Doctor Who must work with a small group of survivors to defeat the Daleks and take back the planet. Both the Peter Cushing Dalek films are often forgotten or just completely ignored by Doctor Who fans, but today I want to discuss what I love about this underrated classic and why I think you should all watch it. So join me as I discuss the second Dalek film, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD.
I'm the Doctor.
Fantastic. I reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.
Have you ever thought what it's like to be wanderers in the fourth dimension?
After the financial success of the first film in the UK at the box office, Amicus Productions rushed out a sequel, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, releasing only a year later. And if you're wondering if this is an Amicus production, then why doesn't their name appear anywhere in the credits? Well, their co-financer Joe Vigoda only agreed to co-finance both films, provided that his company, Aru Productions, was solely credited as producing. But it's essentially an Amicus production. Gordon Fleming returned to direct the film, with screenplay again by Amicus co-founder Milton Schabotsky, and input by David Whitaker, who was script editor for the actual TV story. If you haven't checked out my review of the first Dalek film, be sure to click the card up above and watch it. The film is another readaptation of a Doctor Who TV serial, this time the second Dalek story, the Dalek Invasion of Earth, only with a few deviations for the film and a much larger budget. So let's take a look at some of the most noticeable changes. To start off with, as with the previous film, the Doctor is no longer an alien, but is a human inventor called Doctor Who, played once again by the great Peter Cushing. TARDIS is Doctor Who's own invention, and yes, the interior drastically differs from the TV version, still retaining that same look from the previous film, albeit with some alterations that they made for this version. Roberta Tovey also returns from the first film to play Susan, Doctor Who's highly intellectual 11-year-old, or I suppose she'd be a 12-year-old now, granddaughter. This time round though, the characters of Ian and Barbara are no longer present for this adaptation like they were with the previous film. Both Roy Castle and Jenny Linden were unavailable to reprise their roles, so two new characters were especially created for the film. Louise, who is Doctor Who's niece, played by Jill Curzon, and Police Constable Tom Campbell, played by the late great Bernard Cribbins, 42 years before he would go on to play Donna's lovable grandfather, Wilfred Mott. We still don't get the iconic theme tune, nor do they use the same theme that they created for the title music for the first film, but instead we have an entire new theme that was created for this film, which I actually prefer out of the two movie titles. I think this one perfectly encapsulates the fun, adventurous tone flawlessly. The whole romantic subplot involving Susan falling in love with the character of David and then departing at the end of the story is no longer present. I mean, that makes complete sense because Susan is a child in the movie. The story also doesn't open up with a Roboman walking directly into the Thames. The Robomen themselves look vastly different compared to their original TV look, now wearing uniformed black leather outfits with motorcycle helmets. The characters of Larry and Jenny are completely removed, with the character of Tyler, now renamed Wyler for the film, performing most of Jenny's part as well. The Slither monster from the original is also nowhere to be seen in this version, and there's no longer a sequence where Susan and David escape the Daleks via a sewer and encounter alligators. Also, the Daleks' base of operations at Bedfordshire is no longer their Dalek saucer as it was in the original. Instead, it's a building the Daleks have converted. The resolution is also slightly different, with the diversion of the Dalek bomb resulting in how the Daleks are defeated for the film. Other sequences from the original TV version have either been changed or removed, or characters themselves will be no longer present for the film. But other than that, it's almost the same plot-wise. This time we open up at night with Police Constable Tom Campbell patrolling a city street before he is attacked by a man as a jewellery store is burgled. It turns out the man that attacked him was the robber's getaway driver. Pursuing after the robbers, Tom runs to a police box, but to his amazement, it's not a police box at all, but Doctor Who's time machine, TARDIS. Tom passes out, Doctor Who then turns on the scanner, seeing the aftermath of the jewellery store burglary outside, and decides to take off in TARDIS, bringing Tom with him into the future. Tom then awakes and is introduced to Doctor Who, the Doctor's granddaughter Susan, and his niece Louise, and is told that he is in the year 2150 AD. Unwilling to believe the Doctor, Tom steps outside with the others and sees for himself that he is in a completely different location. The rest of the story is pretty much similar to the original. Some building debris falls blocking access to TARDIS, Susan hurts her ankle, the Doctor and Tom go to explore while Louise goes to wet a handkerchief to put on Susan's ankle. Doctor Who and Tom discover a dead man dressed in in all black, wearing a helmet that seems to have a radio transmitter inside it. Meanwhile, Louise returns to Susan, where she is nowhere to be seen. She meets a man called Wyler who tells her Susan is alright and urges Louise to come with her because of the dangers of being outside in the open. Doctor Who and Tom go outside and see a flying saucer land in Sloane Square. They become surrounded by the Dalek soldiers, the Robomen. They try to make a run for it, and a Dalek emerges from the Thames and orders the Roboman to take them to the Dalek saucer. Wyler takes Susan and Louise to the Resistance hideout and meet David and their leader, Dortmund. Back to the Doctor and Tom, who are now being placed in a prison cell within the Dalek saucer. They break out of the cell using a comb to break the magnetic field of the lock, but as it turns out, that was a test made by the Daleks to find out who was the most intelligent prisoners, so they could then transform them into Robomen. The Daleks then broadcast a radio message to all of London demanding that the rebels come out of their hiding places, or the Daleks will completely destroy London.
Come out of your hiding places, and we promise we won't exterminate you. And tell them we'll gift them with uniform. Oh yes, and we will gift you with shiny leather uniforms.
Dortmund, David and Wyler then orchestrate a plan to attack the Dalek saucer with their newly developed explosives. The Doctor and Tom are then put through the robotization process, but before the process is complete, David, disguised as a Roboman, together with Wyler, Louise and the other rebels, attack the saucer and free the Doctor and Tom. But the Daleks send more reinforcements, resulting in most of the rebels being killed, with the exception of Wyler, who hides in a building, Louise, who hides in a storage room in the Dalek saucer, Doctor Who and David manage to escape via the sewers, and Tom, who manages to pose as a Roboman. Wyler returns to the Resistance hideout and then plans to leave with Dortmund and Susan. Tom manages to find Louise in the Dalek saucer, but the saucer takes off before they can leave. Doctor Who and David then head for the mine in Bedfordshire. Dortmund sacrifices himself to ensure that Wyler and Susan can escape the Daleks. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be, but the guy just really wants to pick a fight with a bunch of Daleks. Louise and Tom escape the Dalek saucer via a food disposal chute and encounter a mine worker who hides them in a workshed. Wyler and Susan encounter two survivors, but sell them out to the Daleks in exchange for food. Doctor Who and David arrive just outside the mine and meet the character Broccoli, who agrees to smuggle them into the mine complex. They meet up with Tom and Louise, and we find out from one of the workers called Conway that the Daleks are using slaves to dig the mine to the center of the Earth, so the Daleks can destroy the Earth's core and replace it with a device that will allow them to pilot the planet. Doctor Who then sees the mine shaft plans and then comes up with an idea to divert the Daleks' bomb to another mine shaft that converges with the planet's magnetic poles, and thus using that energy released from the explosion to suck the Daleks into the core. So Tom and Conway go to divert the bomb in the mine shaft. Broccoli refuses to help and leaves, but comes back to leading to one of the best scenes in the film. Doctor Who is then taken to the Daleks' base of operations, and the Daleks kill Broccoli. Tom and Conway are attacked by a Roboman, and both Conway and the Roboman fall down the mine shaft to their deaths, and Tom continues heading up the mine shaft. Doctor Who is then reunited with Susan and meets Wyler. Tom then uses some old wood paneling from inside the mine shaft to create a ramp that will divert the Daleks' bomb from its original path. Then Doctor Who creates the ultimate epic diversion to distract the Daleks.
Look!
And he runs to the Daleks' Roboman radio link and orders all the Robomen to attack the Daleks.
Hey, what are you doing? Who turned out the lights? I cannot see.
The mine workers escape the mine, and Doctor Who, Wyler, and Susan run from the control room. The Daleks quickly deal with the rogue Roboman and release the bomb, which goes down the diverted path created by Tom and explodes, resulting in the Daleks being sucked into the core of the Earth. And the Daleks are defeated. And how that bomb didn't break through that old wooden timber, I will never know. Doctor Who, Susan, Louise, and Tom return to TARDIS, where they take Tom back into the past a few moments before the burglary takes place. Tom apprehends the robbers, taking them back to the police station, and Doctor Who, Louise, and Susan wave goodbye, and that's the end. I mean, if Doctor Who took Tom back, then surely he would run into his previous self, and this entire adventure with Doctor Who would never have happened, resulting in a paradox. But hey, it's a fun ending, and I don't really care that it doesn't make sense. There's a lot to enjoy with the film. Peter Cushing is once again superb. He's still that same eccentric, charming, grandfatherly figure that's excited to explore, and it feels like his own interpretation of the character. He has some great moments, like the scene with Broccoli, played by Philip Maddock. A whole lot of people will know him from The War Games, or Solon from The Brain of Morbius. And his response to Broccoli...
I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't apologize. I expected it.
Broccoli himself is a man that's always in it for himself. He's only in it for his own gain. And the Doctor, when he sees him come back, immediately knew the type of person he was and was expecting him to betray him. And he's always thinking on his feet, like when he escapes the prison cell. And that's the thing, throughout the film, he's so determined to want to stop the Daleks from the moment he first sees the Dalek coming out of the Thames. He also doesn't have those fake eyebrows that he had in the first film, and he wears a completely different wig. The only unfortunate thing is he has less to do in the film. Most of his part was reduced to his ill health, with a lot more focus shifting on Tom and Wyler's characters. Bernard Cribbins is a great pairing with Cushing. He's not annoying like Roy Castle's version of Ian from the first film, and like with the first film, his character is there to interject levity. Although he's not clumsy or buffoonish, Tom is really likable. His character is brave, fearless, and heroic, and I love the fact that he's a new character. It sets him apart from Ian. There comes a moment within the film though, where Tom disguises himself as a Robo-Man. It never really quite landed for me. I always thought the scene itself, it was dragged on too long, but other than that, he's superb in the film. Jill Curzon plays Louise, and unfortunately, she has nothing to do and is really wasted. She's just kind of there sometimes in the background. Roberta Tovey also has less to do, paired with Wyler for most of the film, but she still has that same level of intelligence that she had in the previous film. And that's the thing, like with the original, everyone is paired with someone, have their own adventures, and everyone's path ends up converging at the mine. Doctor Who is with David, Tom is with Louise, and Susan is with Wyler. Wyler, played by Andrew Keir, is the one who really is committed to the role, and he really makes you believe that he's a survivor in this ravaged world, someone that has lost almost all hope, but is still plowing on because he has to. He is one of the best supporting characters within the film. The film has some awesome memorable moments, like when the Doctor and Tom are being taken to the Dalek saucer, and one of the survivors tries to make a run for it and is killed by the Daleks. The stuntman performing in that scene actually broke his ankle, but it was worth it because it made for one of the best scenes in the film. Or the scene with Wyler driving the van smashing directly into the Daleks, which is much bigger and better than the original. And the scene with Wyler and Susan staying at the cottage of those two women that immediately sell them out to the Daleks is way better than the original, with the Daleks just waiting outside there for them the moment Wyler opens the window. The film has one of the first instances of product placement in any film ever, with Sugar Puff cereal advertisement being placed throughout it, and it's pretty easy to spot, which contributed in the film having a much larger budget. Now, you don't have to be too eagle-eyed to spot that the Daleks for the film look different to their previous appearance. But why? Well, a lot of the Dalek props that they used in the first film had been given away in competitions, and others were still making their way around the world to be used for promotional purposes to market the first film, which was still slowly being seen in some parts of the world for the very first time, and the few props that they had left needed heavy repairs. So, with most of the original props gone, Amicus decided to hire some of the props that had been recently used in the stage play The Curse of the Daleks. These Dalek props looked more like the TV versions, so the production team made the conscious decision to make the other Dalek props that needed to be created for the film look more like the hired Dalek props, with only slight modifications being made to the hired props, adding the new panelled shoulder section, having larger dome lights, a thicker gun stick, and larger bases to increase their height, making the Daleks match more to the look of the previous film. Then all the other Daleks were based on that design. But other than the silver drones, we also do have the black and red Dalek leaders as well, with the addition of a new gold Dalek leader. And it's always great when we get a new Dalek colour scheme. I personally prefer the previous film's blue drone Daleks, but these work perfectly fine and look really awesome patrolling the streets of London. We still have the Daleks using their CO2 styled extinguisher guns, and more of a conscious effort was made to make the Dalek dome lights actually work in sync whenever the Daleks are talking this time, and not just have them flash randomly whenever they're not speaking. And once again, Peter Hawkins and David Graham return to reprise their roles as the voices of the Daleks, which is the one thing that is a superior improvement over the original TV story. Even though both Hawkins and Graham provided the voices of the Daleks in the original story, the ring modulation used for creating the Dalek-style voices was slightly different, having almost no modulation and was noticeably weaker than the Daleks' voices used in their first story, except for that one scene where the Daleks talk in a POV shot in episode 6, aka Flashpoint of the Dalek Invasion of Earth, because in that scene they sounded a lot better. There's a lot of things in the film that are better than the original, but I think there's also a lot of things that are noticeably weaker than the original. The depiction of humanity, for instance, in the original it's so much more bleak and dire, and really feels like you're watching the last of humanity in this state of desperation as they try to survive this world occupied by Daleks. Terry Nation took direct inspiration from H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. They also made more of an effort to make you believe in the original story that it was set in the 22nd century, using really good convincing locations, capturing the look of a desolate world, or when Barbara and Jenny steal that antique truck from a museum, whereas in the film it's just some random truck, and it definitely doesn't look like it's from the year 2150. And you really got that sense and feeling that the Daleks had occupied all of London by showing off various popular land sites with just Daleks moving about, and you could easily imagine most of the world being like that. It's something that's really lacking in the film, and I wish we would have seen some Daleks in some more iconic locations. The Roboman process is also irreversible in the original. Having the character of Larry searching for his brother only to find out that his brother is now a Roboman is really sad. The Roboman results in the Daleks' downfall, whereas in the film, Doctor Who orders the Robomen to attack the Daleks, which happens in the original, but then you can see the Robomen run away from the mine when the bomb is released, almost like they got their own free will back. Also, the look of the Robomen I much prefer in the original. It's like the Daleks took the most intelligent humans, exactly as they were, and just reconditioned them, and then put a Dalek branding style on their shirts, rather than giving them a special leather Art Deco style uniform. I also really like the intelligence test in the original. It's much more sophisticated, like it's an actual puzzle the Daleks are testing on their prisoners to see who is suitable for robotization. And the most iconic scene of the episode was the Dalek emerging from the Thames, and that is way more impactful in the original, being harshly lit as the Dalek slowly emerges from the dark waters, and the black and white probably really helps with that as well. But in the film, it emerges far too quickly, is shot from a far distance, and then cuts away to the Doctor's reaction, then cuts to the Robomen emerging. And the music, it kind of ruins that really cool moment. It's an okay scene, it's still shocking, but I think it's much more impactful in the original. The music is another weird thing. At times it can feel like it's clashing with what we're seeing on screen, especially in action scenes where it's very jazzy and bombastic at times. The model of the Dalek saucer as well, it looks so much more impressive than the saucer that was used in the original. However, with every remaster released from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, then to 4K, the wires on the model become even more noticeable. I'm not going to blame the film for that, but with the advancements in technology, it becomes more and more noticeable each remaster. Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD was made for £286,000, a budget that was almost 60% larger than that of the first film, with £50,000 being spent on just marketing for the film alone. And due to the underperformance at the box office, the plans for the third Dalek film were quickly abandoned. But Gordon Fleming directs, once again, a fun, exciting, fast-paced action adventure. The film promises Daleks and gives you them. You believe that the Daleks have taken over the world and are totally threatening, oppressing the last remnants of the human race. But overall, I think the film is noticeably weaker in comparison to the original story. The original is spectacular. It has a great depiction of humanity trying to survive this post-apocalyptic world. The Daleks themselves feel like they've succeeded in controlling the Earth for many years, and Hartnell is just magnificent. And of course, it has the touching departure for a companion right at the end. It's not only one of the best 60s Dalek stories, but it's easily one of the best First Doctor stories. But in me saying that, I still have a really good time with the film. I look at it as its own separate thing. So why should you watch it? It takes that original 6-part story and reimagines it, transforming it into a great streamlined version of the original, having more of a family-friendly, action-heavy, fun, adventurous feel to it that flies by at a very brisk pace. Peter Cushing is delightfully charming as Doctor Who, and is absolutely determined throughout the film to stop the Daleks. Bernard Cribbins as Police Constable Tom Campbell is the highlight of the film, delivering a terrific performance, and the supporting character of Wyler, played by Andrew Keir, is also marvellous as well. The great thing about the film is you can still enjoy it without watching the original TV story. And like with the previous film, it does not deserve the negative response it gets from fandom. It has a great production design, authentically capturing the look of a post-apocalyptic London, with Daleks that are completely menacing and threatening throughout the whole film. I would encourage anyone to check out both of the Dalek films and watch them for yourself. I hope you enjoyed my discussion on both the Peter Cushing Dalek films, and I'm curious to know what you think of them, so be sure to tell me in the comments below. I would also greatly appreciate if you could leave a like on the video, that way more people can see it. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. But you've been watching The Who View, I hope to see you next time, but bye for now.